The forest had always whispered to Mara, but she had never listened. Not really. Growing up in the village of Thornmere, nestled against the edge of the Whisperwood, she had been taught the same lessons as every other child. Stay on the paths, never venture deep after sunset, and above all, ignore the sounds that drifted from the darkness between the trees. The woods were old, the elders said, older than memory, and they held secrets that were not meant for mortal understanding. But on the night of her 23rd birthday, when the autumn moon hung full and amber in the sky, Mara found herself standing at the forest's edge with her heart hammering against her ribs and her feet already moving forward. She told herself she was only going for a walk, that the suffocating quiet of her cottage had driven her out, that she needed air and solitude. These were lies, thin as spider silk. The truth was that she had heard it again, that sound that had haunted her dreams since childhood, the sound that no one else seemed to hear or acknowledge when she mentioned it. Laughter. Not the cruel mockery of bullies or the forced politeness of social gatherings, but something else entirely. It bubbled and sparkled like water over stones, musical and wild and utterly joyful. It called to something deep within her chest, something she had kept locked away beneath years of practical living and sensible choices. The path she followed was barely visible, overgrown with ferns and creeping moss. Moonlight filtered through the canopy in silver shafts, illuminating her way in patches while leaving the spaces between drowning in shadow. She should have been afraid. Instead, she felt awake for the first time in years. The laughter grew louder as she walked, leading her deeper into the Whisperwood than she had ever ventured. The trees here were ancient, their trunks wider than her cottage, their branches intertwining overhead like the vaulted ceiling of a cathedral. Strange flowers bloomed in the darkness, their petals luminescent with soft blue and violet light. The air tasted different here, sweeter, charged with possibility. And then she heard it, the unmistakable sound of running water. Mara pushed through a curtain of hanging willow branches and stopped, her breath catching in her throat. Before her lay a river unlike anything she had ever seen. It flowed through a clearing bathed in moonlight, but the water itself seemed to glow from within, rippling with colors that shifted and changed, now silver, now gold, now the deep blue of twilight. The sound it made as it rushed over smooth stones was the laughter she had been following, a sound so full of life and joy that she felt tears prick her eyes. Beautiful, isn't it? Mara spun around, her heart leaping into her throat. A woman stood behind her, though Mara could have sworn no one had been there a moment before. She was tall and willowy, with hair that seemed to be woven from moonlight itself, and eyes that reflected the river's ever-changing colors. She wore a dress of what looked like water and starlight, flowing around her as if moved by an invisible current. "Who are you?" Mara managed, her voice barely a whisper. The woman smiled, and it was like watching the dawn break. "I have many names, but you may call me Lyrael. I am the keeper of this place, the guardian of the laughing river." She tilted her head, studying Mara with those ancient, ageless eyes. "The real question is, who are you, Mara of Thornmere? And why have you finally answered the river's call? You know my name. The river knows all who hear it, but few have the courage to seek its source." Lyrael stepped closer, and Mara caught the scent of rain and wild roses. "You've been listening for it your whole life, haven't you? Even as a child, you heard its laughter in your dreams." It was true. Mara had always been different, always hearing what others couldn't, seeing patterns in the world that no one else seemed to notice. Her mother had called it daydreaming. The village healer had suggested she might have a fever of the mind. She had learned to keep quiet about it, to pretend she was like everyone else. "What is this place?" Mara asked, turning back to the river. Its laughter seemed to intensify, as if pleased by her attention. "This is the river of lost destinies," Lyrael said softly, moving to stand beside her. "It flows through the spaces between what is and what could be. Every choice never made, every path not taken, every dream abandoned. They all flow here, waiting." Mara stared at the glowing water, watching shapes form and dissolve in its depths. For a moment she thought she saw images there, herself as a young girl, reaching for something just beyond her grasp, herself older, standing at a crossroads, herself in a future she didn't recognize, wearing robes of deep purple and carrying a staff that crackled with light. "I don't understand," she whispered. Lyrael placed a hand on her shoulder, and Mara felt warmth spread through her like liquid sunlight. You were meant for more than the life you've been living, Mara. The river has been calling you because you have a gift, a power that has been sleeping inside you, waiting for you to be ready to claim it. You are meant to be a river walker, one who can navigate the currents of possibility, who can help others find the destinies they've lost. The words should have sounded mad. They should have sent Mara running back to her cottage, to her safe, predictable life of weaving cloth and tending her small garden. Instead, they resonated with something deep inside her, something that had always known she didn't quite fit in the world she'd been born into. "What if I say no?" she asked, though even as the words left her lips, she knew she wouldn't. Lirael's smile turned sad. "Then you return to Thornmere, and the river's laughter will fade from your hearing. You'll live a good life, perhaps, a safe life, but you'll always feel the absence of what you turned away from, like a missing piece of your soul." Mara looked at the river, at the impossible colors dancing in its depths, at the futures and possibilities swirling in its current. She thought of her cottage, of the loom sitting in the corner with its half-finished weaving. She thought of the village, of people who had never quite understood her and whom she had never quite understood. She thought of all the years she had spent trying to be normal, trying to silence the part of herself that heard magic in the wind and saw wonder in the ordinary. "What do I have to do?" she asked. Lirael's eyes lit up like stars. "You must drink from the river. But be warned, once you do, you can never fully return to the life you knew. The river will change you, awaken the power that sleeps within you. You'll see the world as it truly is, in all its possibility and magic. You'll have responsibilities, tasks to fulfill. The path of a river walker is not an easy one." Mara knelt beside the water's edge. Up close, the laughter was even more beautiful, more complex. She could hear layers within it now. Joy and sorrow, hope and loss, all the emotions that made up the human experience woven together in a symphony of sound. She cupped her hands and dipped them into the river. The water was cool and warm at the same time, tingling against her skin like champagne bubbles. She brought her hands to her lips and drank. The world exploded into light and color. Mara gasped as power surged through her veins, awakening senses she hadn't known she possessed. She could suddenly see the threads of magic that connected all living things, glowing networks of light that stretched from the trees to the stars to her own heart. She could hear the songs that everything sang, the deep bass of the earth, the whistling melody of the wind, the percussion of her own heartbeat. And she could see the river for what it truly was, not just water but pure possibility made manifest, the raw potential of the universe given form. When the initial rush faded, she found herself still kneeling by the riverbank, but everything had changed. Her body felt lighter, stronger. Her mind was clearer, sharper, and floating in the air around her, visible only to her newly awakened sight, were threads of light in every color imaginable, the pathways of destiny, the roads not taken, the futures that could still be. "Welcome, River Walker," Lirael said, her voice filled with warmth and pride. "Your true life begins now." Over the weeks that followed, Mara learned what it meant to be a river walker. Lirael taught her to read the currents of the river, to understand the language of possibility. She learned to trace the threads of destiny back to their sources, to see where lives had gone wrong, where choices had led people away from their true paths. She discovered that she could, with permission and great care, help people find their way back to lost destinies. A farmer who had always dreamed of being a musician but had given up his instrument when his father died, Mara helped him see the threads of possibility that still existed, the ways he could weave music back into his life. A woman who had abandoned her gift for healing after a patient died, too afraid to try again. Mara walked with her along the river's edge until she found the courage to pick up her work once more. The work was exhausting and exhilarating in equal measure. Each person she helped, each destiny she helped restore, sent ripples through the river, changing not just one life, but all the lives connected to it. She began to understand the responsibility Lirael had warned her about, the weight of seeing so much possibility, and knowing that she couldn't fix everything, couldn't save everyone. But she also discovered joy, unlike anything she had ever known. The joy of helping someone find their true path, of watching their eyes light up with recognition when they finally understood what they were meant to do. The joy of working with magic, of feeling the river's power flow through her, of being part of something vast and beautiful and eternal. 3 months after she first drank from the river, Mara returned to Thornmere. She had been afraid that the village would feel like a prison, that she would chafe against its limitations. Instead, she found that she saw it with new eyes. The people she had once thought of as ordinary were revealed to be extraordinary, each carrying their own magic, their own connection to the threads of destiny. She set up a small cottage on the edge of the village, close enough to be part of the community, but near enough to the Whisperwood that she could easily reach the river when she needed to. She didn't advertise what she did. She didn't need to. The people who needed her found her, drawn by the same inexplicable pull that had drawn her to the river. Some villagers whispered about her, of course. They said she had strange eyes now, that seemed to see too much. They said she spent too much time in the forest, that she talked to the trees and the streams. But they also came to her when they were lost, when they felt like their lives had veered off course, and she helped them find their way back. One evening, as autumn gave way to winter and the first snow began to fall, Mara sat by the laughing river with Lyrael beside her. The river's laughter had taken on a different quality with the changing season, something more contemplative, but no less joyful. "Do you ever regret it?" Lyrael asked. "Leaving your old life behind?" Mara considered the question, watching the snow melt into the glowing water. She thought about the quiet desperation she had felt before, the sense of being trapped in a life that didn't fit. She thought about the magic she now carried within her, the people she had helped, the purpose she had found. "No," she said finally, "that wasn't really living. This is living. Even the hard parts, even the days when the responsibility feels too heavy. I'm finally who I was always meant to be." Lyrael smiled and stood, her form beginning to fade into the moonlight. "You've learned well, Riverwalker. Better than I hoped. The river chose wisely when it called to you. Will I see you again?" Mara asked, though she already knew the answer. "When you need me, I'll be here. But you don't need me anymore. Not really. You've found your destiny, and now you'll help countless others find theirs. That's the true magic of the Laughing River. It doesn't just change one life. It changes all the lives that life touches, rippling outward like rings in water, forever." And then she was gone, leaving Mara alone with the river and the snow and the infinite possibilities that lay ahead. Mara sat for a long time, listening to the water's laughter, feeling the magic pulse through her veins, and smiling at the future she couldn't see but knew would be extraordinary. She had followed the sound of laughter into the dark woods, and it had changed her life forever. She had found her magic, her purpose, her true self, and in doing so she had discovered that the greatest transformations often begin with the simple act of listening to the world, to the magic that surrounds us, and most importantly, to the whispers of our own hearts telling us who we're meant to become. The Laughing River flowed on, eternal and ever-changing, carrying its cargo of lost destinies and forgotten dreams, waiting for the next person brave enough to hear its call and drink from its transformative waters. And Mara, now a guardian of those waters herself, would be there to guide them when they came.